holidays from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
Welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this evening. One thing I do want to dive into is firearms, Second Amendment, right to defend yourself, natural right. Also, we have to look at the increase in anger, hatred, and violence in this country, which it's really mischaracterized in the media, and they want you to believe that, you know, shootings are just, you know, skyrocketing when they're not. But anger and hatred and emotions are definitely on the rise in a negative way, which again enables, you know, certain candidates to become candidates in the first place. So it becomes something that through the emotions, people start thinking irrationally. And part of it also plays on the rhetoric and the propaganda that many of these candidates put out. We live in a time where people are always in a hurry to get the next thing done. There's not, you know, work real hard for, you know, this amount of time and then, you know, get off and spend time with, no, it's just work, even for your children. When it comes to homework, you know, it's just work, and then work some more. And in reality, a lot of times it's to have less. People now don't have property as much. You have a lot of people that live in apartments, condos, which, you know, for some people it works for them. You know, they want that. But when you look at what they pay for that, it's not really a value, because, you know, value becomes what you can hold. That's why, you know, you can't hold gold or silver when you're holding the Federal Reserve note. It's not a certificate anymore. It's a note. There's no actual value there other than your belief that it is that valuable. And that's what they want people to believe. Less property can be more valuable. But when you look at the very, very top, they're buying large amounts of property, and they don't seem to think that way, that little pieces of property are more valuable. It's really the trendies and all that. But we'll get into all that. I do want to kind of, before I get into, talking about gun rights and firearms and all that, I do want to get into something that Ron Paul covered on one of his Ron Paul Liberty reports. This one was July 11th, and it's the violence in Dallas. And he asked the question, is it the wave of the future? And I think that there's certain people behind this that, through the same type of funding and techniques, it seems like they're trying to do what they've done in other countries. It's kind of a realization that this could happen, but there's also quite a bit of pushback that we see here that I don't think we've seen in some of these other countries, that it's almost like I'm seeing that glimpse of humanity coming back through a lot of this tragedy. But we still have agitators, and we still have people in denial too about the police state. And that's why I don't even like to get into the Black Lives Matter, the white, Asian. No, we don't need groups. We don't even need all lives matter. We just need to address the actual issues, and that's the this militarization in this police state. And you create that militarized police state, and then you're going after people that are doing drugs, or it becomes, you are using extreme amounts of force against people that may not have even been suspected of harming anyone else other than themselves, maybe. And we are using extreme amounts of force. So I see the issue on both sides. You do have police now that are just, they're so on edge, and they've already been trained to be on edge, and then this happens, and it's going to continue to increase that nervousness in officers when they pull people over. um, we have to really get a grip on reality on both sides. um, the law enforcement, which I know there's quite a few out there that actually, you know, take people's rights seriously. And we've seen quite a few of those people stand up, and I have at least tried to recognize those people, and I know other outlets have. Um, we have to do that to let them know that, you don't have to have this, police brotherhood being the only people that are going to ever be there to support you. That, the citizens out there will support you if you are doing good. Um, it, it's it's one of those things. They feel that if you rat on one bad cop, you let people know, this guy's not doing his job right. He's a bad cop. He shouldn't be in this position. He shouldn't, have this authority type stature in the community because he's violent or irrational. You have to be able to point that out. But see, if they do that, then other officers might not trust him. Well, if other officers don't trust you, are they trying to hide something? If they're not trying to hide something, they should trust you because they know that you would be one of the good guys. And then you should also know that the citizenry will support you. We just have such a division in every part of society, whether there be that racial tension, law enforcement against the citizens, government against the citizens. It just becomes this divisionary thing where they can usher in things so easily using fear. But let me go ahead and get into this Ron Paul Liberty Report, Dallas Violence, Wave of the Future.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, who is the Executive Director of the Institute for Peace and Prosperity. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Well, good. There's been a lot in the news, and we have spoken a little bit about it, but we decided we'd wait a couple of days to find out more information about what went on in Dallas. And there's been a lot of reports and a lot of opinions made. And I imagine, though, although we waited a couple of days, there's still a lot to be learned about who did what and what motivated the killer and this sort of thing. But it's obviously a big deal when somebody goes out and shoots 5 policemen and wounds a bunch of other ones. And it's a further continuation of violence in our city, which is something that we've known about and we follow it. But this one, to me, is a little bit different. The killings are there. There's an individual with a gun. And the left responded like robots. They said, see, it's the guns, it's the guns. They don't really want to talk about the gun being handled by somebody who was militarized by our U.S. military. But to me, there's one other difference. Ordinarily, if they can get any connection at all to Islam radical jihad, then the right, more excuse, we just need to drop more bombs. And this time it turns out that it looks like he's an admitted white racist. He hates whites. He wanted to kill whites. And I assume that is probably true. So there's a little bit of difference. The left should be more on the defense, but if not, as long as they stick to their program by going after the guns and make that to blame. But the right is a little bit handicapped, because they can't say that what we need is a greater war on terrorism because this is different. So this invites a different discussion. Well, if it isn't Islam, what is it? And it's something that I've talked about, in the past about how economic policy and monetary policy and all this has changed our culture. And this should not be a surprise to a lot of people that our streets are blowing up. And I suspect it's going to continue.
Adam Dick, who's the senior fellow at Institute of Peace and Prosperity, wrote up a piece over the weekend. He wrote up an interview that you did over the weekend after the shooting. But he pointed to an article that you wrote in 2015, a speech, your predictions for 2015. And one of the main things you talked about was there's going to be a rise in inner city violence. And you went into a lot of detail about it. The two things you touched on then, and I don't know if you made the connection, but you also touched on it in the interview when she said, well, what one thing would you change? Yeah. And you said, well, it's got to be 2. But you said this in your speech in January 2015. It's the Federal Reserve and the drug war. And I think people, if they first heard that, they said, what is he talking about? But you draw it all together.
Well, yes, there's a lot of resentment. I mean, to have this type of conflict, you have to find a reason why they're at each other. And it really didn't start last year or last month. This has been smoldering for a long time. And I think it's a reflection of a culture and a reflection of an era. I talk about an end of an era of the Keynesian economic era, and it's not working, and the poor are getting poorer, the middle class is getting wiped out, the rich get richer, the stock market is propped up, and there's a lot of resentment. And I think it shouldn't be hard for people to understand why blacks feel the resentment, because they're out of proportion to the population. They end up in prison, and they arrest, in the drug war. To me, of course, getting rid of the drug war would help a lot there. But the judicial system, I believe, is corrupt, and there's no fairness there. So it goes on, and then a lot of people, especially in the minority communities, are suffer more out of proportion for economic policies. So they're poor and they're out of work. But where I see the real problem is there's a lot of justification for the minority community to be upset and angry, but they don't have an understanding of economics, and they have been taught for almost 100 years that they're entitled to be taken care of, and that they are victims, and it's never their fault, and therefore they have a right to do what government does, and that is use violence to get what they want. Nobody stops and thinks the tool that government uses most likely is the threat of violence or violence. It's not just the preservation of the Second Amendment and the Fourth Amendment, which would be a limited role for government. It's always the use of government to benefit one group over another. And then when the system goes broke like it is, you can't have anything happen but resentment and people resorting to force, and it invites nuts to pop up, and act out of proportion. Because if you try to, analyze this individual, and you might try to do that on what contributed to it, but I think there's an atmosphere, but then you come along with the nuts who are willing to overstep their bounds.
You have to wonder, and this is an issue that's bigger than we can tackle in this show, but the atomization and polarization of society in sort of the social media era, which rather than bringing people together, sometimes tends to isolate them more. And that looks like that may have been the case with the Dallas shooter. First of all, he was a JROTC, then he went into the Army Reserves, and then he did a tour in Afghanistan. And while he wasn't in combat, according to the press reports, he was in the vicinity of combat, and he heard shells, mortar shells, which may have done something to him psychologically. He had a sexual harassment problem there, which got him sent home. And I can imagine the humiliation and the shame of that on top of the other kind of led into the mix. And then he tried to get involved with some black groups, radical black groups, and they didn't want him because his character was flawed, the sexual harassment problem. And so these things boiled up, and then as you point out, the other societal factors, it makes you wonder, what made it happen?
So there is no magic one thing you can do, or even two things, because we're talking about a whole culture of violence that develops through economic and political reasons. But we also have another problem that we talk about frequently, and that is how events like this are agitated by the media. Whether it's the war in Iraq or a war on our streets, the media isn't very helpful. I mean, they stir up the racial tensions very often, and this is something that is done routinely. Then you have the black leaders stir up tensions too, and they take advantage of this and come in and stir things up. And you have Al Sharpton and a few others come in and just want to agitate and say it's all racism, it's all whites hate the blacks, and it's white policemen killing black. But I saw a statistic the other day that really amazed me, because I asked a few other people that didn't know the answer. I would have answered incorrectly myself. What percentage of the people killed in a year by the police are white versus black? And it turns out that twice as many whites get killed by the police than blacks. And I don't think there's very many people in this country who would say that. Are twice as many riots on the streets caused by white people being killed by the police? Whether I'm sure they could be killed by white or black police. And they say that if a black policeman kills a white civilian, you probably won't hear too much about it. There probably won't be demonstrated because I think racism is very, very big in here, but it's that fertile field for that where people have been taught this. This isn't like these people wake up and say, I think it's all the whites' fault. Mm-hmm. They have been conditioned to this, that there's always an advantage. And yes, there's terrible situations. And like I say, the justice system is not justice for blacks when it comes to enforcing the drug laws. Mm-hmm. And there's so much reason for that. But if we don't understand that and just say, well, nope, it's just racism, and therefore we have to combat it, and then you end up with this guy, evidently he wrote and said, and a black chief of police gets up and said, well, this guy said that his whole purpose in life on this episode was to kill white policemen. And he killed, 5 white policemen and injured a lot of other ones. So I think there's a lot of racism there, but I think it's secondary. I don't think it starts with racism. I think it starts with some bad government policies, what I think.
Yeah, you make a great point about the media, because the media, there's so much pressure to get out there, to compete, to pay the bills. I think that has a lot to do with it. But, and they hype it up. But, I was reading in the New York Times this morning, there's a Harvard professor, black Harvard professor, brilliant guy, one of the youngest full professors at Harvard ever, under 40. And he did an exhaustive study that showed, that looked at the use of violence against blacks and whites by the police, how much more likely were blacks to be handcuffed, for example, or frisked and what have you. And in all of those factors, the blacks were percentages more likely to have these things happen. But when it came down to being shot by the police, percentage-wise, not even in absolute numbers, because there's a different percentage of population, but he found that they were about equally likely to be shot between blacks and whites. But the media would never report it that way.
Perceptions aren't that way. But especially in the last 50 years, there's been a lot of teaching by our government and the demagogues that you're a victim if you're not doing well. It was somebody else's fault. It isn't one's own purpose. Overcoming some obstacles, which may be very unfair, but some people are able to do it, others not. Some people just dwell on this. And then we have the professional demagogue that makes a living at it, even in government and out of government, that, I'm going to stir it up and I'm going to get you more stuff, and you need more money and you need all of this. And it's all done with the violation of rights. And the government's supposed to be there to protect our rights, and yet it's the violation of these rights and the use of force to try to mold society by the government.
And then you have a marginalized member of society who may have some mental problems. We don't know if he was on psychotropic drugs after coming back from Afghanistan. We've seen it in a lot of cases that they've come and they've sought treatment for PTSD and depression, and that's actually made things worse. We don't know if that's a factor in this either, but you do have this vulnerable sector of society that's marginalized in terms of their mental health and other things.
I think that so many of these school shootings, which haven't been related to jihadists or at least implied jihadists, have been on psychotropic drugs, and I don't have much respect for those drugs or the doctors who prescribe all these drugs, but so often they have been on these drugs, and that's a major thing. And that's especially true of people who've been in the military. That's why that was one of the first things I suspected. The guy's been in the military. He's been to Afghanistan, although he didn't see combat. Combat is all around, and people get blown up in trucks and, all kinds of things. And that might have been a stressful thing for him. But he could be on drugs. I'd like, maybe someday we'll find that out. But, on the issue of violence, one writer that we quote frequently is Bastiat makes this point that if you and I aren't allowed to do anything, we can't take from our neighbor just because we want, and we can't steal, rob, or hurt people, and governments shouldn't be able to do that too. And of course, that's a good principle, but it's hardly ever followed. Governments think they're above the law. So when governments accept the principle that they can initiate force, taxation, regulations, wars going on, preemptive war, all the molding that they want to do and to tell people what their personal habits should be, and it just goes on and on. They use force for what they want. Why shouldn't the individual then go to the extent of saying, well, maybe not consciously, but subconsciously, they realize, well, you have to take what you need or deserve, and they're willing to use force. I don't think they have any moral remorse about it. I don't think they say, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And even when the killing occurs, the police are killing people, so we need to kill people. And, of course, that cycle has to be broken up. And it would be hard for one policy change, but there's one principle that could be changed. The world would be a much better place off if we had the maximum number, not quite, maybe we'll never get them all, if we had the maximum number of people that would know and understand what the non-aggression principle is. That you cannot initiate force or violence against somebody else, even if they follow rules in their social life that you find abhorrent, but if they do it and it's only harmful to themselves, you don't have the right to come in and tell them what they have to do. Same way in economics. Why should the government have this right to interfere on an economic transaction, what you pay for people, what you pay people to work for, and what the conditions are, and on and on? It's your money. You should be able to spend it. And just in social matters, social associations are done with two adults agreeing on it. And if there is, there's no violence used. They should be that in economic matters. And internationally, boy, wouldn't that be wonderful if we would lead the charge? Because right now we're leading the charge to preemptive war. And that, of course, is very, very dangerous, and participates in it too, because it's the use of violence. And then it transmits to people coming home. Some of these people who have been security officers overseas come home and they get on our police force. And they like the militarization of our police. They like these tanks and all these things. So this, I think the problem in the inner city is a reflection. The bad economic policies, the poverty, which is unfairly directed at a certain group, and this mentality that everybody's entitled to be taken care of. It's a fertile field for more violence, and I cling to my sense of optimism because I still talk to a lot of young people, and they like this idea of self-reliance. You mean I could be self-reliant? I could keep what I earn. I could work hard. Government's, of course, not going to have money when I get Social Security and all these things, that they sort of like this. But you don't hear much about it. Unfortunately, you didn't hear much about it this time. The students who got attention this time were the ones who were flocking to, I want more government socialism, and that, of course, is sad. But that doesn't mean there aren't still a lot of people out there that love the idea of personal liberty.
Yeah, that's true, but it is troublesome, this polarization of society.
That's for sure. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report, and this is obviously a very important issue. It's more than the shooting in Dallas or Orlando and the various places. It's more than just the liberals attacking gun ownership, and it's a lot more than the solution coming from, well, if it's a Muslim that did it, it's radical Muslim jihad that did it, so therefore we have to continue the war against Islam in a blanket fashion. It's much more than that. It is the initiation of force that government starts it off with. The inequality that is something that might be present in a free society, but the degree of inequality, when you see the middle class being wiped out and the rich getting the benefits from the Federal Reserve, this is very insightful to a lot of people. So really, one of the solutions to this problem is understanding economics from the Austrian viewpoint, and understanding how free markets work and how it's based on a moral principle of individual liberty and honest money and limited government to protect our rights. So the answers are out there. And unfortunately, we're not getting any help from the media because they stir the pot. This happens, and they love it. They like to paint it as racism and guns and different things, and encouraging the government guns to be in charge, and the people not even have the right to defend themselves. So the answers are out there. It's found in the cause of liberty. I hope we can continue to promote that cause. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.
Ron Paul Liberty Report, Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube, and RonPaulLibertyReport.com. Go check them out. Subscribe on YouTube. Again, Ron Paul Liberty Report. Now, when we start looking at the whole social construct that has been basically being ushered in, we've seen, the shift in public schools up to 12th grade, and then also in the universities. Now, I went to a school that the 2-year type school, and I didn't go to a major university. It was one of those things that I didn't see what was going on in my time in the universities, but I can tell you what I seen in the high school environment, and the generations that came up after. Now, I I would be considered a millennial because of when I was born, but I really what the whole grouping of millennials. I've really only seen probably about maybe 1/3 of people in my grade that would be under that umbrella of what your stereotypical millennial is labeled as. And then the year after, the grade under would probably have been about half, and the incoming would have been about 2/3 to 3/4. Um, I seen it as I was getting out of high school, but most people that I grew up with would be more in the Generation X. I can, I grew up listening to Nirvana, Bush. I wasn't the big millennial person. It wasn't until I was in, college that I was kind of listening maybe some Sum 41. Just, occasionally whatever was coming on the radio. Um, I would really didn't get into music too much back then as I do now. Um, I love all genres. I get into it, but the the whole social construct that I seen coming up after I was out of high school was it was foreign to me. I really didn't even know how to even look at it. It just seemed like, you know, we came up, into cars and, working with our hands. And the generation after was, it was what we seen in that little small group of people that were kind of the very, very outsiders that you didn't really see much. And, that was the seniors and people coming out of high school still, doing the whole Pokemon. Oh, we see that now with this whole Pokemon Go. But they were coming out of high school where their life revolved around fantasy. And I guess that's the best way I could describe it is they really had a disconnect. When I got out of high school, and got into college, that's when the bigger phones just started getting compact. You had your Nokia, and then also, the Razor popped up, and people just, were how could they make it small? It was one of those things, but they came up with, they really were in a fantasy world. And, you kind of looked at it like, they'll kind of grow out of it. But that's where not seeing what was going on in the universities, the major universities, and this ability for them to see these young adults still in kind of a living in these fantasy worlds and being able to play off of that. And I think that played a major role. And I'm not sure exactly where that shift was because, like I said, the people in my grade level didn't seem to have that big of a disconnect. Now, like I said, there definitely were, a small portion, probably about 1/3, but 2/3, were pretty reality based for the most part. We all were kind of programmed to a certain point in public schools, but these other people, they were into the anime, the magic, and really you couldn't talk about anything reality based. What was going on in the world, in the nation, in the state, in your community. Um, you know, they had almost very little knowledge. But most in my grade level were pretty well grounded. So I really don't know where that disconnect. So, I've had people be like, you millennials. I'm like, I don't have that. We were into, cars and, you know, we were hands on with most things. It kind of, we grew up where, yeah, some of us had computers in our house, but, it was Windows 3.1 and then, Windows 95. And before that, the green screen, in middle school and high school, we had green screen until, the last couple of years, they had more updated Windows computers. But they were still pretty basic. What we have now in our hands is probably a lot more powerful than what I had. Um, I still remember, taking your typing class with the old green screen Apple computer. That's what we had. So I don't know where that disconnect. I can't answer, questions about where that disconnect comes from. But again, it's not everyone. You can't put them all in a lump sum. So what we have to do is, keep reaching out to the portions that are kind of more awake and the ones that, use a level of logic to critically think things, do their own research. And I think that you can break that programming because it really, it had to have come in the media. And I started thinking about it, you went from, networks that played music to networks that were then playing, teenagers in precarious circumstances, should we say? I'm sure people know what I'm talking about. It became one of those things that I think media played a part in it, but also one big thing is parents. We also grew up in an age where we started seeing the parents out of the house more. and more. And that, I think, was the one thing I could say about my generation is we were the generation that was now seeing very, very few stay-at-home moms, even stay-at-home dads, or, um, you know, people that were working overtime. And you start seeing why when you look at, oh, the housing bubble. Most of these people were in decent houses, but, the house prices were, through the roof. And when that housing bubble popped, and now they owe more than their house is worth. Which I think further disconnected people. And then, you started seeing people laid off and then causing problems within the household, which further broke down the family structure and probably caused quite a few young people to start retreating to that fantasy world. So, Ron Paul touched on quite a few of that when he talked about, the whole breakdown of our social structure, where I believe it's really a disconnect in the family all the way up. They, I think, have successfully started to break down the family in a way that, if you look at our history, you don't see it that way. It's something that has grown and grown, and when you see economic times, you've seen some of that problem during the Great Depression, where families broke down because of it. But we also seen a lot of families, go through that struggle. We don't, I don't think, see that as much as we used to. And we've created a social structure where there are so many people that there's not that way out, because we have so much restriction anymore. These people sometimes resort to bootleg, and they are threatened with being put in a cage trying to make $1. And people, they can get a job. You realize that if every job position that is open is filled, that most of the population that is out of work right now would still be out of work, because those opportunities aren't there. And people are like, well, then they can start a job. Well, that's a lot easier than, said than done, when you look at a lot of the restrictions and requirements and money, basically, you have to put out to be able to start something. There are ways that you shouldn't be discouraged from trying, but for others to understand that, these people don't have the knowledge to start a business a lot of times. They would like to. The only way they know how is bootleg, selling drugs, because maybe they've grown up in a community, in a situation where, people that try to get out of this situation don't usually succeed. They always end up back there. They just see no way out. We should, look at regulation. We should look at taxation. We should look at the type of social programs we got out there. It's not one thing that's causing this. It's the empire. empires keep growing and keep suppressing, and eventually this is what happens. Okay, give me a second here. I have one here from We Are Change. And this is Race War, Martial Law, What You Should Really Consider. And then after this, we are going to get into some Second Amendment and things like that, because we know that this is being pushed and at a faster and faster rate as it gets to the end of Obama's term. I really think that they are pushing to get it, done before he's out of office. But let's go ahead and get into this clip.
This is Luke Radowski of WeAreChange.org here in New York City. As you're seeing, a Black Lives Matter protest is happening right behind us. And of course, the country is divided amongst race more than it has in a very long time. I'm here with Sasha Daygame, a pickup artist, dirty word, comedian, and also just an amazing outright human being that I've been talking to, talking about maybe a deeper, bigger solution to all of this, because this problem that we're facing in America, this kind of race issue, seems to be perpetrated by the establishment, seems to be perpetrated by the mainstream media. Whenever there is a Latino or even a Caucasian person who was assassinated and murdered by the police department, there is not such an outcry, there is not such attention as we are seeing currently unfolding in this country. Obviously, police brutality is a major issue, is a major factor that this country is facing. But ultimately, what we're seeing is people divided, and we think ultimately, I said ultimately too much, what's happening here from our perspective is a lot simpler. To me personally, the problem comes down to people not ultimately loving themselves, having a void within themselves, because we're seeing societal pressures put on us in order to make us feel insufficient. And when a person feels insufficient, when a person doesn't truly accept themselves, doesn't truly love themselves, they project that onto others. Obviously, we are seeing a lot of hatred, a lot of racism, a lot of negative, horrible, decrepitable behavior based on society. How do we fix that? Just give us the solution right now, Sasha.
Well, ultimately, Luke, first of all, I want to say there's a poo smell. It's really subtle, and we knew before we started, like, there's this poo smell is going to come up, and I'm going to talk about it, so that's the first thing I'm bringing up. I'm suffering through a poo smell right now for this interview, so I hope that's appreciated. Yeah, you make a lot of good points, mainly because I gave you that idea right before we started, so to steer this in the right direction. But it really comes down to separation. It really comes down to separation. So all society and the controllers, and it depends how deep you want to go into who's really pulling the strings, but let's just say it's not normal, nice folks like us pulling the strings. And they're just trying to separate everyone from everyone else. Divide and conquer. On every single level, it's divide and conquer. So the police feel like they have absolute power. They can do whatever they want to. They're trained to think, and actually, in a way, you can kind of see why it makes sense, that we normal people are the enemy. Right? That's their reality. So they're the good guys, we're the bad guys, and of course they've used their power. So they're separated from us, and that creates a massive amount of tension and murder and all this kind of stuff, and that creates a lot of problems. Then you've got black people who feel like, white police officers are racist and they're killing them, and to a degree that's true, and to a degree some white people are just normal cops and they're doing a great job. Everything's always a gray area in the middle. They're controlling language, which is very, very dangerous. If I stand here or I make some joke and I say chink, faggot, nigger, any of those words. People that already just because I said those words, people are going to be freaking out. Oh my God, he said the N-word. But see, you got to ask yourself, like, why are you offended by that? What does that even mean? Because the way they separate is they make people police themselves. See, they turn people against themselves. So that we're so busy fighting each other. This guy said this. This is politically incorrect. This person against women. Feminists are attacking men. Men are like, what the hell are you talking about? So everybody's so busy fighting each other over completely small stuff. They just keep raising taxes, killing people, assassinating people, doing whatever the hell they want. And we're all like, well, that guy said, he said faggot. Let's get this guy. He said faggot. Come on, everybody. Meanwhile, your government's taking, whatever, 40, 50% of all the money you ever make and using it to bomb the fuck out of people who have done nothing to anybody. But that's fine. Don't worry about that. He said the N-word. Let's get this guy. And that's really what it comes down to. Everybody's fighting everybody else. And as soon as people wake up and realize that we're all being manipulated, well, this game is over.
Yeah. Let's not talk about the systemic problems of the prison industrial complex, which is a system established in this country to put people in jail as a form of slavery. There's more people in jail in the United States than there is in any other country in the world, more than in China. Wrap that fact around your head. The real problems will never be addressed, but the little problems that divide and conquer you, me, away from each other based on our races, on our sex, on our differences, on even our opinions, those are going to be highlighted in order to bring chaos. And out of that chaos, the establishment looks down and they're like, okay, we're going to order this around this way, order out of chaos, and create a solution that works in their benefit. And while we're all fighting each other on these dumb issues, the real problem is up above and no one is looking up there. And I think the main reason why this is happening is because we kind of been programmed societally to feel insufficient, to feel like we as human beings need trinkets, need other goods, need constant drama, need constant attention. And ultimately, if we just say, just shush all these pressures away from us, let's not consider what society is pushing on us. Let's not consider what the mainstream media is pushing on us. Let's look deep inside of ourselves. Let's look at the power of our reaction. Let's look at what we could do. Let's look at how we could actually solve real problems in this world instead of just ninny-picking and having emotional outbursts and reactions that don't get us anywhere except cause a bigger divide and problem. And ultimately, that is self-love. And if we could just love each other, we wouldn't be having the problems we have in this world. To me, that is the ultimate solution. Very simplified form, but Sasha, you're going to break it down in very detailed form and break it down masterfully right now.
I like how he always puts on the pressure. Well, it is all about self-love. First, just because you mentioned it, I just spent a night in jail for a retarded reason, and that I was at the airport, and I didn't have my glasses. I can't see anything. I walk out of the area where it's secure, where you're about to get on the flights. I walk out. I realize, oh, these people have luggage. They haven't checked in. Okay, this is the wrong area. And then I run back in, and then you're not supposed to go back, right? But I sneak through the door. I go get on my plane. Cops come. They haul me off. And I was completely confused. Didn't know what I was doing. Couldn't see anything. Didn't matter. Trespassing. Spent the night in jail. And I realized in jail, I was talking to another guy in there, and I realized the system is so broken. Like, if I didn't have the money to set bail, it's like $750, which a lot of people do not have $750,000. They just don't have it, I would be in there for months awaiting trial for absolutely doing nothing. There's no victim. No one got hurt. I didn't actually do anything. There was no intent. Doesn't matter. And the guy that was in there, he was in there for some BS, not even worth going into, but it's just because he's poor. And it's so ridiculous that you could, without ever being found guilty of anything, have your freedom taken away. And we all don't realize, the one good thing about going to jail for a night is when you get out, you realize, like, there is no excuse for us not to accomplish what we want in our lives, because you are a lot more free than you realize. In the most fundamental way is that you have some choices out. You can do whatever you want to. People give me excuses now. I'm like, yeah, are you in jail? Are you in a cage right now where you can't leave? No, you can do what you want with your life. Seriously, even though we're controlled in a lot of ways, fundamentally, you are free and you can do what you want. So anyway, to a degree. But going back to the main thing, yeah, man. So my job is just helping guys who want to meet girls and they want to connect with women. And that's how it starts. That's always where the journey starts. And guys, some guys, they dress bad, and some guys don't know how to flirt, and they don't believe in themselves, and they have all these little things. But when you really go deep, the only reason anybody can't really connect with another human being is that they're not connected to themselves.
And a lot of times we see other people hurt other individuals, it's mainly because they have pain inside themselves that they can't deal with. And we're seeing that with some of these kind of Black Lives Matter activists who are saying there is a systemic racist problem. And in some parts of their argument, they are right, especially when it comes to the incarceration rates, especially when it comes to judges giving harsher sentences to people of color, whether it's Latinos or African Americans. That problem is there. But some of the activists see the solution as saying, well, they're being wrong to us, they're being oppressive to us, we're going to be just as oppressive and just as wrong to other common citizens who have nothing to do with the systemic problem. And that's when we're seeing this whole kind of this kind of race problem getting out of hand. So it's duplicitous. I won't be saying Black Lives Matter is completely wrong. I won't say that they're completely not wrong either at the same time. The problem is a lot more sophisticated, but a lot of people, especially other news organizations, see that if they do push those race buttons, they see if they do make a particular choice on the organization, whether it's one news organization saying the Black Lives Matter organization, all of them are terrorists, or other people like the White House, MSNBC, and CNN being favorable to them to an extent where they actually don't even cover the wrongdoings that they're doing. You're seeing both sides of this kind of biasness in order to divide and conquer. Some of it, it's done for monetary purposes, because if you say something explosive, it will get more hits, it will get more ad revenue. But again, you're not leading to a full solution. You're not helping this problem at all. And it's getting to a point where it's really intense in this country, where the divide is so strong you could sense it all around you just by walking around, just by we were here and then the protest was here in front of us. This is happening right now, and it needs to be addressed in a professional, real way. Back to my kind of point that I started with, whenever someone is hurt inside, the way people deal with that is by hurting other people. How do you get past that, and do you see that within some of your students?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really sad to see. So in the sort of pickup community culture that I came from, because guys have all this anger and they're frustrated because they can't connect with women, they're not getting sex, they don't have that companionship, they're not getting that love, and they never...
Sorry, technical difficulty here.
Tension is and just the level of vibration you're at is more important than anything. See what I'm saying? So if you're low frequency, you're angry, you're hateful, and you're eating shit, you're gonna die. You're gonna get cancer and die. I swear to God, that's how it works.
What you believe is what you ultimately create in your life. And once you're seeing a social justice warrior freak out and act irrationally, which we have seen all throughout the internet for a very long time now, you have a choice. You have a choice to see and try to be right and self-important by pointing a finger and making fun of them and creating a bigger problem and creating a bigger divide. Or you could say, well, maybe this person is freaking out because they're damaged in some way and are having a hard time dealing with this issue. And by trying to understand them, then you could actually deal with the issue that you're facing and create an actual solution and deal with this human being. Otherwise, if you don't agree with somebody, like social justice warriors, I don't agree with a lot of their thoughts and ideologies and beliefs, I just choose not to associate myself with them. I just choose not to talk to you. I am entertained by them. I will talk to you. I will try to get deeper with you. Some people have a hard time opening up, and of course their defense mechanisms are up. But ultimately, if you do take the time and patience to truly try to understand someone, you will see why they justified their kind of insane actions. And once you explain it to them, they can be like, oh, wait, yeah, I was kind of being stupid. I was kind of being irrational. by doing these behaviors, but only if you come from a true person of love, if you have love within yourself, because if you have nothing but resentment and hate within yourself, you're just going to point your finger and create bigger hate and resentment, creating that cycle, spinning into oblivion. And you guys know, when I'm talking about other media organizations, you probably know who I'm talking about. Let me know in the comment section below. Sasha?
Well, I just want to add, that's great points, and I'm with you 100%. 110%, guy. But, yeah, we get so lost in our own narrative and our own issues and again, all the shit that we're dealing with that's coming at us all the time. It's hard we just lose perspective. So if you actually look at someone else as just another part of the one source that's brought us all here, whether you want to call it God or creation or whatever, it doesn't matter. They're you and you're them and we're everything. And so when you actually look at someone, just go, okay, this is a person that's in pain. You would be amazed at how you can diffuse situations and actually connect with people. Just listen. Just really listen to what they're saying. Someone will say something, you're blah, 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 and you can just be like, hey, man, I see you're upset, but I'm not your enemy. I'm actually on your side. We're not enemies. I'd love to help you. So let's resolve this together. And you actually give someone a little bit of love and just listen to their problem and actually just connect with them. You could turn somebody who you might get into a fight with into an ally, into a friend, and together you might realize actually we're on the same team. So just being conscious of that and just don't go to your emotional, you know what I'm saying? Just think for a moment and realize this is a human being that's in pain. Let's not make it worse. Let's help them.
And then we could stop dividing and conquering people among race, stop infusing everything with so much hatred, racism, and anger, and actually have a better life and a better society. Yes, we're talking about some hippie stuff. Deal with it. What? I know I'm going to have so many comments in the section below being like, Luke, what the hell happened to you? Like, I was going to say F off. No, I'm not even going to say it. Just,
we love you.
We love you. Oh, God, that sounds so... But ultimately, that is the way forward. Give me your worst. Let me see the comment section below. I want to thank Sasha because I really gave him like really hard, deep down kind of questions that were just thrown at him randomly. And I think he did a good job explaining everything and his philosophy because when we met, we come from two different kind of, I guess, markets. You come from the dating, I come from the news kind of aspect. But ultimately, we're always, as human beings, looking for the deeper meaning of things, looking for a better way of life. That's what that to me is my true purpose, is to look at deeper things, not just as entertainment, not just as clickbait, not just to get money from AdSense by having, racially motivated content and race baiting. I don't want to do that. Ultimately, all that stuff is meaningless, and your legacy and what you live and how you live and what you do in this world will speak and will be more important than anything else. And deep down, if you have a passion for life, if you have a passion for the work you do, ultimately this will lead you down that path. Sasha has gone down that path. I've been down that path, and we've been talking and vibing and being totally gay and hippie and all this other stuff. But ultimately, there is a lot of truth into just understanding yourself and understanding all those around us and having just a little bit of patience to make the world a better place.
Just two final thoughts. I would encourage everybody to take 10 seconds a day to say one nice thing to somebody, like literally, like just a compliment.
Oh, you're such a hippie.
It doesn't mean you have to try and get them in bed or anything, but it could be a beautiful girl, it could be a beautiful man, it could be anybody. But just hey, nice suit. Hey, you have a great walk. Hey, you have a beautiful smile, and just walk away. Do that to one person a day. Your frequency will go up. You'll start feeling better about yourself, and the world will change. It's a beautiful thing. And the second point, which I always tell everybody, follow your excitement. Whatever it is in life that truly inspires you and excites you, go and do that above all else. Spend your time doing what you love, and you will become what you want to be.
Yeah, mofo, be a hippie. Give someone a compliment. I personally practice, it makes common sense, it's logical. I practice gratitude meditation where I literally focus and write down 5 things I am grateful for every single day. And by doing that, scientific studies have actually proven that it grows your prefrontal cortex. It makes sense, it's logical. I guess the short term is be a freaking hippie, fill yourself up. God, these words, though, like, if I was watching this YouTube video, I'd just be like, shut the fuck up with your empty platitudes. I'm fucking sick of it. And I get that side. And I truly, 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 deep down, understand the comments and all the crap you're going to be saying about me. And it's okay. But deep down, this is the truth. Anything else?
Keep spreading the good vibes. I love you guys. We are one. That is the fundamental truth. Everybody is everybody else. And as soon as we realize that, this game is over. And I want to say that. Everybody's waking up. We all know what's going on. Spread the love, and together we are unstoppable. We are We are
Change.
We are change, baby. We are.
wearechange.org, and We Are Change on YouTube. Go check them out, subscribe. And, they're, acting goofy, but it's a serious thing when you look at how you personally interact in society. And, I take a effort to try to be just a positive person. Now, driving, I have to admit, I get pretty aggravated driving. But, I don't take it to no next level or nothing. It's just I get very aggravated. But, other than that, I think I act pretty positively in society when I interact. It really does come down to a lot of the little things you do. And when you master those little things, it completely opens up new doors. And that's one of the things to master is just, always be polite and hold the door for someone. Don't be in such a rush you let the door slam on them. Or, they go to reach for it and you just keep walking and it, starts closing. They got chase the door. Like, thanks, guy. Don't put that negativity in there. Don't make them be like, thanks, guy. Could have held that for me for one split second. Hold the door. I kind of go old school, thank you, sir, thank you, ma'am, constantly. It's just all those little things add up. And right now, where I see those things happening, where I see people, positively interacting with each other, not really saying much, not really getting to know each other, but saying, I have no problem with you. I don't need to know your story to not have a problem with you. I don't need to know that. Your life story, your political beliefs, to hold that door for you. Because it makes it hard for them to turn people against each other when you're like, I don't hate that guy. He's always been a good guy to me. And vice versa. They can look at you and go, well, I'm not going to hate on that guy. He's never done anything to me. I see him every day. When the community's strong, and again, when the family's strong, you're able to break through the propaganda and the brainwashing and the social manipulation. And then a lot of what we see in the media is hyped up. They don't ever talk about half of the time when they bust people in places. You don't see that on the mainstream media. It always seems to be alternative media, breaking that news. Okay, I'll try to bring this up. I had an article here, if I can find it. Here it is. This is from the 10th Amendment Center. This was actually by Andrew Napolitano. Titled, No Fly, No Buy Means No Freedom. The people in the government who want to control our personal choices are the enemies of freedom, and the enemies of freedom can be very clever and seductive. Last month, these folks manifesting their lust to keep us dependent upon the government by rejecting the natural right to self-defense coined a clever phrase, no fly, no buy. It sounds rational, yet it rejects core American values. The phrase was pounded home to average Americans during a one-sided 15-hour televised marathon on the floor of the Senate orchestrated by the gun control crowd. The essence of the argument was that stricter laws regarding gun sales would have prevented the massacre at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida. In gun control advocates' dream world, the self-loathing Islamic State-inspired killer willing to take 49 innocent lives would somehow have been unwilling to violate restrictive gun purchase laws, and his obedience to those laws would have saved lives. Their argument is naive and absurd. A person willing to commit mass murder is surely willing to break the law to acquire the means to commit the murders. So blinded were these senators in their misguided utterances about self-defense that they forgot about the Constitution. The legislation they offered would have required that people whose names that feds put on a terror watch list or a no-fly list, these are often done simultaneously, would not be legally able to purchase a gun. The senators summarized this idea dozens of times as no fly, no buy. Though this phrase, which was quickly picked up by many of my colleagues in the media, has an easy and simplistic ring to it, it reveals a troubling ideology that profoundly rejects core American values. When Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence that we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, and when the inalienability of our rights was codified in the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, the United States was wedded to the Judeo-Christian principle that our rights stem from our humanity. For people that don't believe in, Judeo-Christian, just your natural right that you get from being a natural being on this earth. Think about it. When they try to restrict your rights, they're saying you have less rights than a bear. You have less rights than a alligator, a gazelle. You have less rights than an animal. That breaks down your humanity, your being. Back to the article. This was expressly recognized recently by the Supreme Court in District of Columbia versus Heller, which it held that the right to keep and bear arms is a fundamental personal right, not a gift of the government to a group. A fundamental personal right is the natural ability of individuals to make meaningful choices without a government permission slip. May the government ever interfere with fundamental rights? The short answer is yes. The longer answer is that it can only do so if it can demonstrate a compelling governmental interest served by the least restrictive means and only after due process. Stated differently, if the government wants to silence your speech or deny you the right to self-defense, it must meet a very high burden in a public courtroom. It must demonstrate to a judge and jury that its need to silence or disarm you is compelling, and its goals may not be attained by any lesser means. Americans need not demonstrate a compelling need to speak or bear arms. The government must demonstrate a compelling need to prevent us from doing so. That is what lawyers call black letter law, meaning it is well established, followed throughout the land, and rarely challenged until now. Earlier this week in the Senate, the gun control crowd sought to give nameless and faceless federal bureaucrats the ability to strip Americans of their right to keep and bear arms by putting their names on a terror watch list or no-fly list and prohibiting those on the list from buying guns. Yet none of these senators could state the criteria for putting a name on that list, and none could identify the people who prepare to keep the list. That's because these are well-guarded government secrets, secrets that have no place in American life. If a government bureaucrat can put your name on a secret list on the bureaucrat's own whim or even using secret standards, and as a result you have lost a fundamental liberty, then the feds have transformed a natural right into a government gift. If the feds can create a no-fly list in secret and no-fly comes to mean no buy, then we have no rights but what the government will permit us to do. As if to underscore his ignorance of American values, one of the senators even stated that due process is killing us. He must have forgotten his oath to uphold the Constitution, which guarantees that the government may not take life, liberty, or property without due process. Due process, the absolute right to know the law and to force the government to prove a violation of it to a jury before it can take life, liberty, or property, is the essence of the rights of free people. It is utterly scandalous and probably disqualifying from office that a senator could be moan its existence. And we know they do this. Asset forfeiture, no due process at all, not even after they take your property. Your liberty, if they can just stop you and harass you, and you get chunks of the population that say that's acceptable. Says here, can you see how low we have sunk? The gun control crowd doesn't care about personal liberty in a free society. It just cares about control. It wants us all to be pillant and reliant on a government that it controls, never mind that it is utterly incapable of protecting us from crazies who will resort to mass death for their own deranged purposes. If the government secretly can put American's name on a secret list and as a result his liberty is lost, then there are no freedoms, just government granted privileges, and it can do this to the natural rights to travel and self-defense. Can other fundamental rights be far behind? Again, Judge Andrew Napolitano, 10thamendmentcenter.com. Now, they had another article I wanted to cover too. Let me bring it up here. Sorry, taking me a second here. Okay, here we are. This one's titled The Founder's Word Void. When it comes to the limits of federal power under the Constitution, the view of many founding fathers fits under the same theme. That is, federal acts outside the Constitution are null and void. Oliver Ellsworth, the Supreme Court's third Chief Justice, put it this way during the ratification debates. If the United States go beyond their powers, if they make a law which the Constitution does not authorize, it is void. In Federalist number 78, Alexander Hamilton wrote, "There is no position which depends on clearer principles than that have ever act of a delegated authority, contrary to the tenure of the commission under which it is exercised, is void." And in 1798, Thomas Jefferson wrote that whensoever the general government assumes undelegated powers, its acts are unauthoritative, void, and of no force. See the pattern? I won't get into a laundry list of everything that should qualify as void today under the Founders' Constitution, but here are a few to set the stage. ACA, ATF, DEA, EPA, GCA, NFA, NSA, TSA. What to do? It's my opinion that no one in their right mind should expect the federal government to limit itself. This also includes the federal courts, a branch of the federal government, and as I noted in my July 2013 column at Personal Liberty, voting the Burns out hasn't been a good strategy either. In other words, if you have a problem with the federal government, you need something outside the federal government to stop it. That would be the states and the people. First, let me be clear. This isn't my idea. I didn't dream it up one night. It comes from some of the most prominent founding fathers. While James Madison wrote the most specific and complete set of instructions on how to stop the federal government without relying on the federal government to limit itself, he was far from the only founder to talk about states and individuals as a check on federal power. Even Hamilton agreed in Federalist Number 28. He wrote that the state governments would offer security against invasion of the public liberty by the national authority. A little-known founding father from Massachusetts also made the case, just like Madison and Hamilton did, that the states were the strongest check on federal power should they work together to oppose it. In the Massachusetts ratifying convention, Theophilus Parsons said that the state legislature were superior to all the parchment checks that can be invented, and when they are organized in opposition against federal acts, he said that none be madmen would attempt a usurpation. Like Madison, who in Federalist Number 46 recommended that states and individuals employ a refusal to cooperate with officers of the Union, Parsons advised the same. He continued, but sir, the people themselves have it in their power effectually to resist usurpation without being driven to an appeal to arms. An act of usurpation is not obligatory, it is not law, and any man may be justified in his resistance. Taking action. The common thread from Madison to Parsons and even Hamilton is that states and individuals are an essential part of the checks and balances of the Constitution. They are a counteracting force, especially when two or more branches of the federal government work against us. As these founders taught us, when states and individuals take action, they are extremely effective as a roadblock to increase federal power. Whether it is blocking federal gun control, rejecting mass surveillance, ending asset forfeiture, or even bringing down the Federal Reserve, the focus should be on individuals and states, not federal courts and federal elections. This is just what Thomas Jefferson advised as well in response to powers which have not been delegated. He told us that nullification is the rightful remedy. Again, that's from 10th Amendment Center. That was by Michael Bolden. The founders were void. And we don't have as much nullification that I would like to see. That there's so much that they have already done. And I think that we have to get to a point where the states start standing up to the federal government, saying, you're just not going to come in here and do that. Restrict the federal government back down to Washington, D.C. States should nullify federal land grabbing and put it back under state control. because, well, the federal government is only supposed to hold, land in a trust for the state. So therefore, the state says, "Hey, we're cashing in that trust." I think that's where we need to go. I do urge people to go check out 10thamendmentcenter.com. They have model legislation that you can try to push in your state. They have things like the Second Amendment Preservation Act, the Hemp Freedom Act, Gold Silver Bullion Depository, Stop Federal Militarization of Police, Privacy Stingrays, ALPRs, drones, NSA, Asset Forfeiture, Peace, which is Preventing Excessive Allocations for Cannabis Enforcement Act, 5 Steps to Stop Obamacare, Defending the Guard Act, and the Constitutional Tender Act. So they already have a lot of legislation already modeled up. Fill in the blanks with your state, your representative. Push them to start getting these pushed on the House. And when you get enough people doing that, you can make a big difference. But it's up to you and the people that are elected representatives within your state. But again, go check them out, 10thamendmentcenter.com. Okay. Give me a second here. Pull up a couple sites here. Okay, if it'll work. Okay. Now, we have a case that came out of Reuters that has a lot of people pretty happy. It sets a precedent, but it's still not, the end of the game for this device. But in first, U.S. judge throws out cell phone stingray evidence. And if you're not familiar, stingray is a device that law enforcement is now getting their hands on in large to basically spy on cell phone traffic without a warrant. And it says here, for the first time, a federal judge has suppressed evidence obtained without a warrant by U.S. law enforcement using a stingray, a surveillance device that can trick suspect cell phones into revealing their locations. U.S. District Judge William Pauley in Manhattan on Tuesday ruled that defendant Raymond Lambus' rights were violated when the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, used such a device without a warrant to find his Washington Heights apartment. The DEA had used a stingray to identify Lambus' apartment as the most likely location of a cell phone identified during a drug trafficking probe. Pauley said doing so constituted as unreasonable search. Absent a search warrant, the government may not turn a citizen's cell phone into a tracking device, Pauley wrote. The ruling marked the first time a federal judge had suppressed evidence obtained using a stingray, according to the American Civil Liberties Union, which, like other privacy advocate groups, has criticized law enforcement's use of such devices. This opinion strongly reinforces the strength of our constitutional privacy rights in the digital age. ACLU attorney Nathan Freed Wessler said in a statement, it was unclear whether prosecutors would seek to appeal. A spokeswoman for Manhattan U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara, whose office was prosecuting the case, declined to comment. Stingrays, also known as cell site simulators, mimic cell phone towers in order to force cell phones in the area to transmit pings back to the devices, enabling law enforcement to track a suspect's phone and pinpoint its location. Critics of the technology call it invasive and say it has been regularly used in secret to catch suspects in violation of their rights under the U.S. Constitution. The ACLU has counted 66 agencies in 24 states and the District of Columbia that own stingrays, but said the figure underrepresents the actual number of devices in use given what it called secrecy surrounding their purchases. A Maryland appeals court in March became what the ACLU said was the first state appellate court to order evidence obtained using a stingray suppressed. Foley's decision was the first at the federal level. The U.S. Justice Department in September changed its internal policies and required government agents to obtain a warrant before using a cell site simulator. Bernard Seidler, Lambus's lawyer, noted that occurred a week after his client was charged. He said it was unclear if the drug case against Lambus would now be dismissed. The version of the story corrects location of apartment in second paragraph to Washington Heights from the Bronx. Rephrases paragraph 10 to make it clear. ACLU said its figure underrepresents number of devices. So, that's something that is a positive thing, but I think it really underscores the amount of surveillance and the true police state that we are in. It's becoming a Orwellian state. And, I have another article here out of BBC. Privacy wrote over FBI iris scan trial. The FBI has collected nearly 430,000 iris scans over the past 3 years. An investigation by technology website The Verge has revealed. What started as a pilot in 2013 has grown into a database without any public debate or oversight, said the American Civil Liberties Union. It amounted to runaway surveillance. Director of Technology Nicole Ozer tweeted, the FBI said it was developing best practices for iris image capture. The project was launched in September 2013 and has seen the FBI collaborate with agencies in Texas, Missouri, and California. The iris data taken from people who have been arrested can be scanned in a fraction of a second. Privacy International told the BBC it is deeply concerning that hundreds of thousands of people's iris scans are being added to a biometric database without public debate, proper safeguards, or even awareness that such data has been taken and is being stored. If our biometric data is to be collected at all, such systems should not be introduced or continued before a public debate. Strong legal frameworks and strict safeguards are in place. Repeat offenders, the scan takes a detailed image of the ridges of the colored part of the eye, which are as detailed is distinctive as a fingerprint. An average of 189 iris scans were collected every day in California at the start of 2016, according to documents obtained by The Verge. The program was started to evaluate technology, address key challenges, and develop a system capable of performing iris image recognition services, according to the FBI's website. Such technology is necessary in order to easily track criminals and quickly catch repeat offenders and suspects who try to hide their identities, the FBI argued. The project falls under its $1 billion next generation identification system that aims to expand the Bureau's old fingerprinting database to other identifiers such as facial recognition and palm prints. Oh yeah, that's where they want to take it. They at some point won't need your technology that you carry. No stingray is going to be needed. The surveillance state, the police state, and the technology to just track everybody. And they're going to break it down to a science where even if you try to hide your identity, they'll be able to know it's you. And they basically said they wanted to get to that point. Of course, they always try to sugarcoat it, make it sound good. But is it really? When you have a power structure that becomes more and more tyrannical, do you want them to have that type of power? I know I don't. Now, I wanted to get into something here. Give me a second. Okay. I'm getting to it. Give me a second here, guys. Okay. This one's a quick one from AMTV and Christopher Green. Now, I do want to mention something about Christopher Green and AMTV. He put out one 3 days ago. The one I'm going to play, he put out 5 days ago. But the one he put out 3 days ago, Bill O'Reilly and Fox News hijacked, hard-hitting, and in your face. Everybody knows that. That's been Christopher Green's saying on AMTV for quite a long time. And apparently Bill O'Reilly and Fox News are trying to use that. But I want to get into this here. Surveillance state explained. Big tech surveillance state explained. Here we go.
Visit our sponsor, Bonner and Partners right now at cashcutoff.com. That's cashcutoff.com. Bill Bonner's research network predicted the fall of the Soviet Union, the rise of Muslim terrorism, the Japanese crash, and the financial meltdown of 2008. Now his firm Bonner and Partners has published a more dire warning. What happens in the event your ATM doesn't work, your credit card is denied? What if you can't sell your investments? Although this might sound implausible to some, it's a very real possibility. A run on cash. Think about it. How do you pay for goods and services if credit doesn't work? Who among you, your friends and family, actually have more than a few dollars in their pocket? Claim your full intelligence file right away. Get 4 research reports, plus the free book, Hormageddon, and a 12-month all-access pass to the Bill Bonner letter for just $49. It's risk-free for 60 days. Get the Great American Credit Collapse, the Crisis Money Guide, how to get your own homestead on the cheap, and much more. Click the link below right now to register at cashcutoff.com. Perpetual, endless, timeless, infinite war. Perpetual, timeless, infinite, perpetual war to infinity. So they can use it against you, so they can raise the terror alert, so they can justify the surveillance state today. It's why they're spying on you, America. It's why they're listening in on your conversations, the things you don't want other people to hear. They need to know, because the terror alert is so high. They need to protect you, even though they can't, and even though these tragic events occur pretty much on a weekly basis now. And these people hate us. Again, don't ask any questions, but they need to spy. They need to violate the Constitution and rape it repeatedly. They need to get away with this, folks. Okay? They're only here to protect you, to look out for your best interests. So when they're listening to your conversations and wiretapping your house through illegal search and seizure because they've put you on a quote-unquote terror list, they need to do it. And you need to withdraw all your freedom and rights as an American today. It's just the right thing to do, America. Even Donald Trump wants more surveillance, folks. He thinks we need more. It's not enough that they're watching you and your wife make love later tonight or studying your internet porn addiction and other perversions. It's not enough. They need more access, more control, more power. Mark Zuckerberg needs a few more $1 billion. That's the honest-to-God truth. He needs it so he can buy up more strategic real estate and make sure the little people can't even look him in the eye. When I say these things, they should be absolutely unbelievable. It should be shocking. Some of you might just be giggling like little girls right now because it's so ridiculous. And you can't even make this stuff up because it's reality and it's the truth. This is America, folks. Land of the free, home of the brave. Again, we just celebrated July 4th, Star Spangled Banner, fireworks going on, and here we are in this absolute police state. Absolute surveillance state. But again, just be assured, America, that there's justification for it. Inch by inch, death by 1,000 cuts, which has been the agenda, whether or not it's gun control or surveillance, ever since the Manchurian president Barack Obama took office. It's the truth. I can prove it. In fact, I'm going to have our video editors recut a lot of what I call AMTV classic videos, many that you've never seen, predicting a lot of the events, and I don't get everything right, but predicting a lot of the events that we see now. Increased surveillance state, the algorithm that makes up these too-big-to-fail tech giants now that are more powerful than the U.S. government, the wars and the destabilization that has only continued in places like Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Yemen, Syria. I mean, we've got playlists, folks. Dozens and dozens of videos, hours of coverage before it happened. I'm no genius, but I can wade through the bullshit. That's why you're tuning in here. I can see it just like you guys can. Maybe you just don't have a platform to say it. It's why I'm acting on your behalf. It's my duty as an American, as a freedom-loving person, as a freedom-oriented person to the world. I can see how the media narrative is developing before the media pundits do so, and even the media giants do so themselves. See, what's interesting about AMTV is that I'm not controlled, right? I'm not bought. I can say whatever I want. In fact, pretty much we're directing just ourselves everything.
It's just real opinion, real truth, hard-hitting and in your face, wade through the bullshit. And you can't get it anywhere but here. It's really what's so amazing about it. It's what actually kind of juices me, gets me excited. Again, anger can be a good thing, and we have to understand that there are far more powerful forces at work than Hillary Rodham Clinton or Barack Obama. Faces of this regime. It's far more powerful, far more integrated. You know, you get a taste of it kind of at the Bilderberg meetings. We've got some great journalists, you know who these people are on the ground, that go out and capture these interviews and just, you know, brings it to the attention that this stuff's actually happening, not in the public eye, not in the public sphere. It's not that it's a surprise, but again, very powerful, sinister forces at work. The body bag count lists that I just referenced, scary shit. I mean, let's be honest, it's scary, but it's the truth. Like, you can't make up these scandals. I'm not making up Benghazi Gate. I'm not making up Whitewater. I'm not making up Monica Lewinsky. I'm not making up John Ash. Again, fire back at all your critics. They're like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, even though it's just truth, with hard evidence. Send them article after article after article after article, video after video after video after video, proof after proof after proof after proof, until they just can't stomach it anymore. So what's happened to a lot of us is you become enlightened and you wake up and there's that elevated awareness of what's really going on. Even people, I think they know it deep down, they just don't want to believe it. Because once you believe it and turn the corner and you understand that it is reality, it flips this entire model on its head. You suddenly feel very insecure. You realize that your own government can't be trusted, which is exactly why the Founding Fathers set up this constitutional republic the way it is from the get-go. Because a fundamental point of the U.S. Constitution and the establishment of this country is that big government can't be trusted, especially over the long haul, which is where we are now. A totally and completely all-powerful unilateral government, federal government, acting on your behalf in every facet of your life, whether or not it's big technology, what they're integrated with there, with the 5 big tech monopolies somehow that's okay now. Monopolies are okay in America. Or it's the media that is controlled, or it's these politicians that these people in the smoking room own. The James Comeys of the world that are supposed to be acting and taking an oath of office in the best interest of the American people. I mean, that's why the checks and balances are there, right? You do realize that. That's why there's these people, supposedly, like Loretta Lynch, Attorney General, and Comey here, is they're supposed to be the check to balance criminals, fraud. But see, it's not working. That's the fundamental point here that Americans need to understand. It's not working. So what did the Founding Fathers also do? Well, they set up an environment that said if it's not working any longer, then the American people need to take action, just like Sarah Palin has recommended. You need to be the foot soldiers on the ground. And you can do all this peacefully, right? You can write your politicians, you can protest in the street, you can get our media out, any kind of media that is, giving an alternative perspective of what's really going on. You can vote with your wallets. You don't have to bank with any of the too big to fail banks. Go to your credit union. Take your money elsewhere. Support media like us that isn't controlled, bought, and paid for like CNN or Fox News. Vote with your wallets. It's actually one of the most powerful things. Why do you think they keep interest rates at 0 and keep lubricating and masturbating the system like some hooker? They've got to keep you spending and engaged in this system. JP Morgan Chase and Bank of America folks need your support. They need your loans so that they can take $1 and create 10 out of thin air. That's what they call banking, and loan it to everybody else, and then trade on their own derivative accounts with your cash deposits. They need your support, otherwise they go out of business. Just like these politicians, it's what has made Donald Trump so rare. It's why he's been this outlier that has kind of superseded the traditional political model, because Americans are voting a different way politically. Vote with your wallets. Again, why do we have 0% interest rates? They want you to spend. Leverage, 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 leverage. They need it. That's why there's 0 and negative interest rates. That's why they've only bumped up once and real rates have collapsed. That's why gold is doing very well. That's why prepping is important. Physically and intellectually and spiritually. It is my mission to get the truth out to the American people and the people of the world. I'm doing my part. I'm doing my best. Honest to God, I'm doing my best. Every single day, honestly, it's a lot of pressure, folks. I'm doing my best for you. I ask that you return the favor. Very angry today.
We are AMTV Christopher Green. Go check him out. Subscribe. AMTV Christopher Green, AMTV on YouTube. We see again, you know, the millennials so entrenched in social media, and again in this fantasy world, this fallacy. They really are in a fallacy. And, you know, I've talked about it many a times, but it's just one of those things that if we don't get information out there and spread the knowledge of what freedom and why it's so important, why self-reliance is so important, if we don't get that out there, if we can't get that instilled in a good portion of the population, we're going to see a very dark future. And I think we're already seeing the beginning of that. And I'm glad to see the growth of alternative media. But when you look at, again, the monopolies like he was talking about in our social media and the censorship, which you get Facebook coming out saying that we're not censoring, and it turns around to be censoring. The one Liberty memes, they had the one where it says, I forget exactly, it's a picture of Hillary talking about laws are for poor people. That got censored. Got their account suspended. And when you go back to early on when Ron Paul decided to run for president back for the 2008 election, even the 2012 election, we seen extreme amounts of censorship. You could see everything you wanted about the other candidates, but Ron Paul's simple article, sharing multiple Ron Paul articles, were getting people's accounts suspended. On pages that you own, sharing multiple Ron Paul articles was spamming. You know, whether it be, you know, these trolls out there, or it be partially with the trolls within the, you know, these tech companies itself. It's one of those things. The censorship is real, whether they are intentionally allowing it to happen or not. Which I tend to think that they are, just by their blatant public, you know, social and political views that they express so much. Well, if you're so just vehemently against, you know, the idea of freedom, and you're more in line with the authoritarian, you know, eugenics type crowd, and our side gets censored, and you try to go, we don't censor. Yeah, you do. Google basically I think it was Eric Schmidt that basically multiple times said that, yeah, he wants to censor. We should keep things that foster hate, but then they allow those things. They just censor the truth. They censor the things that they're basically wanting to censor to help. They don't want the things that show truth where it unites people against a power structure. They want to show the stuff that creates enough turmoil within the population. Again, kind of what Luke was talking about. You know, it's one of those things you have to divide and conquer within to keep them from uniting against you. That's how the government operates. That's how they believe. And I think that the more positivity that we can put out there, the more we can prevent this self-destruction that will only lead, you know, the order out of chaos. And because if they can create that type of chaos, they can get the order out of it. Because people don't have a principle that they're operating off of. They're operating off of emotion. But when you have a true, you know, a hardened ideology with a principle that we all can agree on, I think that we can move past the propaganda and the brainwashing for the divide and conquer, and we can, you know, regain our liberties back as individuals. You know, no matter your personal lifestyle and your religious beliefs or non-beliefs, your skin color, none of that should matter. It's the right for every individual to be able to live their life as they choose. It's not to not be offended or anything like that. It's simply to be able to choose your own path. I do want to urge people before we end the broadcast here, go check out UCY.tv. Click the UCY support tab at the top if you want to donate, but you can also scroll down to the bottom, click the Amazon button. Shop Amazon through UCY.tv. Get the same great prices and same great shipping rates. And at the same time, UCY gets a little kickback to cover operating costs at the network. And also, you know, my preferable choice for prepping gear is My Patriot Supply. They've been doing great business. I get my seed vaults non-GMO, and they got all kinds of other preparation gear, water filtration, Alexa Pure Pro. Go check them out. If you go to antityrannynews.com/mypatriot, it'll take you straight to My Patriot Supply. Same great deal, same great shipping rate. At the same time, we get a little kickback here at Anti-Tyranny News to help cover our operating costs. And it's really essential that you support alternative media like us and UCY.tv so that we can get information out that the mainstream media won't report on and the people at the top don't want you to know about. So again, UCY.tv, click the Amazon button, and antityrannynews.com/mypatriot. Check out My Patriot Supply, non-GMO seeds and water filtration. Check them out. Thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. Stay tuned here on UCY.tv for all the great broadcasts coming up after this. I will catch you this Friday, and we will see where the nation is sitting at this time and where your personal freedom might be. Thank you again for tuning in. Stay tuned here on UCY.tv. Great broadcast coming up after this.